Savita,
Yes, we are on live.
Savita, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We are live. We'll start in another 5 seconds. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever L&D Leadership League Twangout on employee engagement directly proportional to productivity, a myth or a reality. A People Matters initiative in association with CCL, Center for Creative Leadership. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Savita from People Matters, and we'll run you through a little about the league, and then we'll move straight into the session. This is the second edition to the L&D Leadership League. We will bring before you different set of activities that will give you an opportunity to ensure that each one of us learns, shares, and grows. This year we have half-day conclaves, 30 minutes masterclass, Twangout sessions like this one, annual day conference, L&D Leadership League Awards, to identify the best of the best practices across industries, monthly newsletters that's going to give updates on the latest trends. Do make sure you do not miss out on any of this, and definitely join us and be a part of this league. With this, I'd like to introduce you to our host for today's Twangout session, Sundar Ramchandran, Senior Manager, India Training at Jordan Lloyd Thompson. Sundar leads the learning function at GLT, has moved and been the winner of the Young HR Leaders Are You on the List Awards 2013. Welcome, Sundar. How are you feeling today?
Sundar, you're on mute.
How do you feel today, Sundar? Can you hear us? Okay, let's move further, and our first guest. Yes, we have you back. Please.
Savita, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, my apologies. I'm not sure why, but for some reason my screen just froze. Hey, I'm excited to be on this, on this platform. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to the next 45 minutes. So thank you for making me a part of your first Twangout.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sundar. Our first guest for the L&D Leadership League Twangout really does not require any introduction. He's a great orator, and at various forums has been sharing his insightful experiences. Join me in welcoming Anand Pillai, Senior EVP and Chief Learning Officer, Reliance Industries Limited. With more than 30 years of rich experience in his corporate world, Anand has handled challenging assignments in general management and head of sales operations. Welcome, Anand. It's
Thank
a pleasure to have you here.
Glad to join you all.
Thank you so much. Before I request Sundar to take over from here and kickstart the session, let me just remind you quickly that you can follow us on Twitter using the hashtag #LNDLeague. Please share your comments and your questions on this tag, and Sundar will pick them up for you and have it answered by Anand on the session live. For those not on Twitter, you can also inbox me your questions at savita.vijayan@peoplematters.in. That's savita.vijayan. While we definitely encourage you to be on Twitter for the next session and join the conversation. We have an exciting giveaway for today's session. 1 year of print and digital subscription of People Matters for the most active Twitter listeners. So just shoot in your questions and be as active as ever. Without any further delay, and I don't want to be between you and Anand, I request Sundar to take over from here. It's super exciting. Are we ready, Sundar?
Oh, absolutely, Savitam. Thank you again for the opportunity, and a very good afternoon to all those who are tuned in. There couldn't have been a better theme, especially because we're almost kind of hitting, the mid part of 2014. Employee engagement, I'm sure, occupies top mind space, not just for HR professionals, but general business leaders across the spectrum. So before we actually get into a dialogue with Anand, and obviously we're going to make it interactive, we'll give people an opportunity to ask questions on Twitter. So I'm just going to reiterate what Savita just said. Please post your questions using the hashtag L&D League, and I'll be happy to ask questions on your behalf to Anand. So Anand, I think we can begin with just broad views on what you think about employee engagement as a topic. I mean, there's quite a bit that's been said about it. There are research reports that are doing the rounds, new ones coming out every year. So let's just start with your broad views on this particular theme. Anand.
Yeah, Sundar, and welcome everybody who's listening in on Google Twangout and who's also active on Twitter. As you can see, my Twitter handle is out there. And of course, please do add the hashtag LND League for you to get the questions answered. What we had done is, along with People Matters, we had asked about 3 questions to the people who were participating in the poll, and those 3 questions were: what drives you to work, what drives you to do more work, and then what drives you to leave your job. You will be interested to know the results of this particular poll that we conducted. About 20%, oh sorry, about 56% of the people said that their work independent of the above, which is your colleagues or your boss or your office environment, makes them or drives them to work. And about 8% of it, very strangely, they say their boss drives them to work. And about 11% of them, they say that their colleagues drive them to work. And a small percentage of 5% say that the office environment drives them to work. And you will be interested in a similar study that we did when I was in my earlier organization. So we asked people, what drives you to work? And that was an IT company, and a large number of them were bachelors and spinsters. And we, to our surprise, found out that the office environment contributed to about 45% as the parameter for them to come to work. We went one step further, and we were a little bit surprised, while pleasantly flattered that we have got a great office and all that. But then we found out that 90% of these 45% of the people, they did not have ACs in their homes, and therefore they came to office early, stayed back in the office late, and they kind of hang around there because of the kind of facilities they can get, not so much because they like the office atmosphere. I thought I'll just put that in context. The next question that we asked was, what drives you to do more work? And there were 4 options: salary, designation, perks, and of course more work independent of the above. Here, an interesting 51% of the people, they said if they get more work as a result of more work, then that is what drives them. About 27% of the people said, if salary is given more, then I will do more work. And about 11% of them said if I get more perks, I will do more work. And about another 11% said that designation makes me work more. So that's the second poll. I just wanted to put these things in context. The third poll was, what will make you leave your job? And here, again, there were 4 options: a higher salary outside, a better social status in industry, and of course higher position outside, these 3 being the pull factors. and the push factor being your disconnect with your work. Interestingly, in this particular survey, about 30% of them said a higher salary will attract them to leave their work, and 19% said that a better social status will make them leave their work, and about 5% a higher position. Only 46% said that they are if they are disconnected. But having said that, now I just want to give you a Gallup study that was done on the correlation between employee engagement and personal satisfaction, or satisfaction in personal life. It was found out that the people who are really satisfied in their personal life were 65% of them were already engaged. So there is a very good correlation between personal satisfaction and engagement. About 36% of the people who are not engaged were also satisfied, but only 24% of the people who are actively disengaged were also satisfied in their life. So there is some kind of a correlation that is here. Uh, Another study again done by the Gallup organization, they found out that there is a direct correlation between business impact and engaged workforce. So if you have an engaged workforce, there will be 50% lower attrition, 38% more productivity, and in situations where it's a service providing organization, there is a 56% greater customer loyalty, and of course it adds about 27%, or 27 engaged employees add to about 27% of the bottom line. That's something that is there. And if you do any engagement survey, you get three categories of employees: engaged employees, not engaged employees, and of course actively disengaged employees. We all know the concept, or we all know that we should focus on engaged employees and then try to see less of not engaged employees. But I, through this Twangout, want to emphasize on us putting in more emphasis on not so much the engaged employees and the not engaged employees, but to put a lot of emphasis on the actively disengaged employees. Because these actively disengaged employees, they are out there to take away the energy of the engaged employees. I call them cave dwellers, CAVE. Why do I call them cave dwellers? Because they are constantly against virtually everything, CAVE. And I'm sure you find these people in any organization. You need to watch out for these people, because they will negate the positive energy of the engaged employees, and they will convert the not engaged employees into their own clan. Therefore, this is something that you need to watch out for. Sure, engaged employees will lead to productivity, but we need to go one step further, go beyond employee engagement into employee delight. That's something that we need to be very careful about, because the actively disengaged employees, if you don't take care of them, they are out there every day to undermine what their engaged co-workers accomplish. And even though they may be a minority in any organization, Gallup poll says that it is anywhere between 5 to 14% in an average organization. They suck out the energy. I mean, I'll give you examples which I've shared in one or two conferences before, and those examples are, these actively engaged employees, if you ask them to come to work early, they will not be motivated. They'll ask you why. And if you say, okay, the early bird caught the worm, and then they'll come out with their answer, well, the worm got up early and it got caught. So they've got a negative twist to that. If you ask them to do hard work, and then again they'll ask you why. And if you try to give them a proverb or a kind of assurance, well, hard work never killed anybody, their response will be, no, I don't want to take a chance. So, I mean, these are examples that are there. The cave dwellers have to be watched out for. Having said that, we need to also look at why employees are disengaged. Gallup poll, and of course Hewitt also says that there are 5 reasons why they are disengaged. The first and biggest reason why people are disengaged, or employees are disengaged, is because there are no expectations set at the beginning. So you don't give them what is expected of them, and then you expect them to perform. And like most of us, our KRAs are decided just before our appraisal, and then there is a big mismatch. A second reason why employees are disengaged is because we are not utilizing their potential. And quite often you find a square peg in a round hole. Therefore, that is a problem. The third reason for disengagement, again, as per research, is not giving feedback, and I'm saying feedback in the positive sense as well as in the negative sense. I once made a statement in a rewards and recognition conference, and that statement was something like this, which got tweeted got many retweets. And that statement is simply this: people are not excited or disappointed with the reward that they got or did not get, as long as they don't understand why they got it in the first place or why they did not get it. So if you do not give a positive feedback or a negative feedback at the appropriate time, you will have disengaged employees. Say, for example, if an employee in your team has done something good, seize the opportunity to give them that positive feedback at that time rather than sometime later, because the employee is looking for a stroke. And of course, the negative feedback also, when they did something wrong, call out that bad behavior as and when it happened. Because if you do not, the employee gets the feeling, okay, these things are done, these things are accepted, and therefore they get into disengagement. The fourth one, particularly with the young generation, opportunities to learn and grow is a very, very big factor for engagement. If you do not have opportunities for learning or growing, you will find that people are not at all engaged. And of course, the fifth factor is a sense of caring. Do I matter to the organization? Do I matter to the bottom line? And so with that, I just want to pause and let Sundar, bombard me with the questions that he has received and his own thoughts, so that we can take it forward. I wanted to give this as a kind of a platform and an intro. Over to you, Sundar.
Hey, thank you, Anand. I think there's a lot of meaningful information there. I agree, hard work never killed anybody, but why try? That seems to be, the philosophy for a lot of people. It's interesting. One question that I did have was, these sort of surveys do throw up a whole bunch of statistics. Was there anything in particular that kind of threw you off? Or did you see the usual myths being broken as far as what really engages employees? Anand?
Yeah. I mean, of course, all of us know by now that salary is not in the top 5 of the engagement parameters. I mean, that's something that is now conclusively proven. That doesn't mean you make people live on love and fresh air, but I'm just saying salary is not a parameter. But I was very intrigued, particularly with the fourth parameter and the fifth parameter. Opportunities to learn and grow in the job, and I now happen to be in the learning and development department. I find that the L&D department or the talent management or organization development has got a big role to play in keeping employees engaged. Because if you do not give opportunity for growth and learning, I mean, actually the first one, opportunity to learn first, and as a result of learning, growing, that can be a big derailer. I had in my about 5 years ago, a very important situation where we thought we will reward employees who have met expectations and significantly exceeded expectations with a fancy training program and so on. But if you don't link it back to their day-to-day job, they get more frustrated. And I now come out with this theory, or with this fact, that the best way to frustrate an employee who is really engaged is to send him or her on a fancy training program and get him or her to do the same job that he or she did before they went for the training program. Let's take you, Sundar. You've now received this, coveted top 25 most potential employee, and therefore your organization says we'll send you to Harvard Business School for a program on strategy, on innovation, and so on. And then they get you back, and after you are empowered with so much knowledge and so much skills, they ask you to do the same thing. Then that will really, put your mood off. So that's a sense of learning and growing being correlated, and of course sense of caring. Over to you, Sundar.
Hey, thanks for that recommendation, Anand. I will take you up on that and share that with my CEO. We'll
Yes.
see how it pans out from there.
Yeah, but
Um,
both
but
going
if
for
I
the
were, if I were
program
to
as well
flesh
as
out a
coming
couple
back
of
and
things that
having an
you
increased role, both.
Oh, absolutely. Coming back and having a larger portfolio,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
So
yes.
if I can flesh out a couple of things that you just mentioned, I think most viewers would be extremely interested in two things. Number one, how do you make employee engagement, an integral part of your overall, all your strategic imperatives? That's number one. Number two, what sort of bottom line matrices do you link it to? I think that's where it all goes wrong. So if HR can kind of do a little bit of a backward integration, look at what sort of bottom line metrics you can really impact, and then based on that, create or draft an employee engagement plan. So what would be your recommendation? One,
Yeah.
on including it as a strategic imperative, and two, on linking it to bottom line metrics.
Right. First of all, I know that all of us know this, but I want to place it up front. Employee engagement is not a leading indicator, it is a lagging indicator. Sundar, you are there on that, right? It is an outcome
That's
of
right.
something that we do. So, therefore, organizations should not focus on employee engagement. They should focus on the two other, what I call leading indicators. That is the two other E's, that is, enable the employees, empower the employees, and then the outcome is the engaged employees. So if you do a measure, of your employee engagement, that is only a lagging indicator. So the two things that you should definitely do is enable the employees and then empower. In enabling the employees, you should, and this is where our learning and development department comes in. This is where our support systems come in. This is where a good what would I call a peer network or a buddy network comes in. This is where you give access to employees to knowledge, to information, to also listen to their concerns. So that make sure that the organization has got enough leading indicators on the enabling front. The second one is empowering. One of the paradigms that I always give is, don't empower people before you enable them, because if you empower them before you enable them, then you are basically letting out a bull in a china shop. So first enable by giving the support policies, by giving the support systems, by giving the enabling knowledge, the enabling skills, and so on, and then give them the freedom to perform, give them the freedom to participate, build activities that draw them out. So that's another leading indicator. And of course, you will come out with shining, outstandingly engaged employees if you have done the two leading indicators. Over to you, Sundar.
Hey, thank you very much, Anand. So before we move further, just a quick reiteration for the audience. You can ask your questions live to Anand. Just post it on Twitter using the hashtag LND League. I also want to remind our viewers that there's an interesting most active listener contest going on, wherein you actually stand to win a year-long digital subscription of People Matters. And we established the most active listener by the number of retweets and how actively you're engaging with us on Twitter. So moving on, one of the questions that a lot of people have been asking on Twitter, Anand, is around this whole linear way that in which most human resource departments look at employee engagement. You just mentioned, and I'd like to flesh that out a little bit here, about how learning plays an important role, how the line managers play an important role. So how do we create a very composite way of dealing with employee engagement? Not as something as a short-term project that human resource teams can execute, but more as an, embedded in the organizational fabric where every single stakeholder gets involved. What are some of the best practices that you've seen in that particular sphere, Anand?
Yeah, one of the best practices that I have seen is, for the manager to have informal conversations with the employees, because that is where they get to draw out the employees' real concerns. And here I give three statements, which if I say slowly, you will be able to get it. We encourage the manager to have a formal conversation in an informal setting, and an informal conversation in a formal setting. And the office environment also must be conducive for that. I'll give you a simple example. I've got my colleague here, Vijita, with me, who will be also adding in, and she's my research associate in social learning. And then I've got John, and I've got Neil, and I've got Srikanth. Let us say I pick any one of them, and I say I go up to John and I ask him to give me a report on the project that he is doing, and I ask him to come and meet me in my cabin. That is having a formal communication in a formal setting. Obviously, he's going to give me some numbers, some facts and figures. But on the other hand, if I go to him and I say, "Hey, John, what are you doing now?" He says, "Well, nothing really." And then I ask him, "When do you catch up for tea?" And then we go to the cafeteria, and then while we are having tea, I ask him, "So how's the project going?" I mean, that's an informal setting, but I'm having a formal conversation. So these are moments where the employee feels a little bit more connected with the boss. And A large number of organizations do not have enough space in the cafeteria, enough space around the water cooler for them to have these informal conversations and get into bonding. And this is where, of course, the extreme example is Google. I mean, their workspace is like facilitating such kind of a thing, and that's the reason why people are so connected with the work. So we need to have this kind of a practice of having a formal conversation in an informal setting, and an informal conversation in a formal setting. For example, if you're meeting in the cabin, have some soft talk. How's everything at home? Your health is not good. Why don't you do something about it? And things like that. I mean, that is a practice that I would like to. I have done it, and I would like to promote. That's one thing. I mean, these are all the softer issues. We all know the harder issues on aligning, do a correlation between the skills and the work and all that. I mean, all that is there, but try to build in the human side of the enterprise. I mean, we'll have to go back to what we studied by Douglas McGregor. I mean, the human side of the enterprise has to be brought. And I go one step further and I say, we as HR professionals should bring the H back in the HR practices. Bring the human component. We are all a bunch of policies and procedure implementers. So that's I don't want to give too many best practices, but I'm just saying, just breathe in a little bit of fresh air, breathe in a little bit of humaneness in our interactions.
Thank you very much, Anand, and I totally resonate with what you said. It's always the small things, it's always those informal conversations between two people that make a big difference, right? A lot of viewers, I'm sure, work with large organizations. You lead learning for a very large organization as well. Let's talk about scale, and I think this is where technology and platforms come into play. We're seeing a lot of traction around the globe on how these are being leveraged to engage employees. What are some of your views on use of technology, use of social platforms, specifically targeted at employee engagement, and are there recommended practices that you can share with our viewers as well?
Yeah, and see, there are two or three things that I want to bring. We definitely should create an environment that is conducive for people to collaborate. And there is no better way than to bring in a social networking platform. You need to have your own internal Yammer or your internal Facebook or Jive, your internal blogs, and get people to connect with people of like mind. That is something that you will have to do. There is no excuse for anybody not to be connected in today's connected world. That's something. Even if the IT policy does not allow an organization to have extensive use of social media like Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. I mean, you got these tools available on your smartphone, and you definitely can get that. So technology has to be there, but let technology not replace one-on-one interaction. I mean, I do not know if you saw, I tweeted in I think about 3 days ago, there was a very interesting short movie made on how social media kills personal relationships, and that went viral courtesy social media. I mean, that's the irony that we have. But having said that, we have got more smartphones and more dumb people. I mean, that irony is something that we'll have to break. A social media tool, a social media platform is not an excuse for me to walk up to my colleague and greet him or her. And we need to move away from the likes that we can get on our platform to the loves and engagements that we need to have with our colleague, where the human connect is there. There is enough and more of the technology and platform that is there. As far as possible, for example, a Google Hangout. I would like more Hangout sessions, even with my employees, where I see them face to face, where I interact with them. And we in our organization have got very, very extensive video conferencing facilities. So we get to see the person irrespective of his or her location. And when you have a face to connect to that email, when you have a face to connect to that transaction, when you have an emotion to connect to that transaction, you are far more wedded, you are far more bonded, and that brings in a kind of engagement. So yes, technology and tools, there are enough technology and tools, and I really don't want to focus on that because that is available, and today's Googled world will throw up a whole lot of them. But I'm saying come back to the people connect and use technology to connect with people. Google Twangout is a definite one example that we have, where we can see whom we are talking to. And therefore, use that kind of a platform to connect with people, in addition to the character-based connections like Twitter and Facebook and so on.
Great. Thank you, Anand. I think we're getting a whole lot of questions on Twitter as well, as you could see. So let me actually pick up a question from my Twitter stream, and this question comes from Rakshita Divedi, who goes by Rax_D on Twitter, and her question is: while engagement is important from day one, what phase of employee life cycle do we really need to focus most on when it comes to engagement? And if I can add a new dimension here, you're seeing an increasing amount of organizations actually going ahead and trying to engage people even before they get onboarded into the organization. So what are your thoughts? What are some emerging trends that you're seeing in that zone, Anand?
Yes, I think that particular practice of engaging with employees even before they physically join the organization is an excellent practice, because what happens is, I mean, in today's world, we find that the good talent is walking around with 2 or 3 offers, and if the intending organization does not engage with them even before they join, I mean, there are some people, I mean, I hate to say this, they will sell their soul to the highest bidder. So they will go with the most fancy designation or with the most fancy social status, and therefore if they are not engaged with the would-be organization even before they join, they will go by the external parameters like salary, designation, ease of work, and all that. Therefore, engagement must begin even before the person joins, and the onboarding process is where we need to pump in a lot of the activities, a lot of the focus, so that we create what I call an EBA, emotional bank account, to have a very highly engaged employee, and there will be natural dips in the employee engagement, natural dips, normal dips, and if you have built a good enough emotional bank account, then you can say, okay, I'm not yet on zero balance on overdraft. So the first 90 days is a very important thing, in addition to possibly 45 days or whenever your appointment order is given and the time the employee joins. So there is a pre-joining phase, then there is a first 90 days phase. The third phase I would like all organizations to focus on, and research has shown that after appraisal and after increment, the employee engagement dips, and this is world over, irrespective of whatever be the appraisal rating you give and whatever be the increment you give. And this is where a lot of communication has to be given. We need to empower and enable our line managers to have what I call crucial conversations, to have what I call skills in giving effective feedback. And because of that, and I hate to say this, many of the managers, they make HR the scapegoat, where they say, I mean, listen, I wanted to give you this particular rating, but guess what? HR turned it around. I wanted to give you this particular increase in salary, but finance turned it down, or somebody else turned it down, and as a result of it, employee engagement will drop. They will get disengaged. And there is another correlation that has been done, and that is the attrition is the highest after appraisal or after a particular increment cycle. So three big phases we need to look at to focus our engagement energy on. One, and you have rightly hit the nail on the head, much before the employee joins the organization, the first 90 days for sure, but also look for natural dips in the employee engagement, one of which is post appraisal, post increment. You need to be very sensitive, communicate. And when the organization is going through a transition, supposing the organization is going through a tough time and there are rumors in the market you're going to be bought out or you're going to whatever, at that time also employee engagement dips in, because they do not know what will be their status. So in a change management exercise, in a HR transformation exercise, we need to communicate, over communicate, so that the connect with the employees are there and draw them out into informal settings and keep them occupied, so that you listen to their heart in addition to their mind.
Great. Thank you, Anand. I think completely, yeah, thank you. Completely agree with you that, it's an ongoing process, but obviously there are certain phases, which do call for a high touch, and organizations, must provide for that. I'd like to take a question which is actually coming from the Facebook page of People Matters, and this question has been raised by Muthu Lakshmi Satish, who is an assistant manager L&D with Integra Software. And she's asking, can you suggest some retention strategies, for employees, given that, retention is a big part of engagement?
I personally would not like to recommend any. There are available practices. For example, many practices center around ring fencing, that is, you give deferred stock options, or you give, there are some organizations which give a golden handcuff, put a contract clause or something like that. They are definitely good retention strategies, in the sense that the employee will be give a very attractive joining bonus. I mean, all these things are passé, because I don't want an employee who is not engaged to be retained for that bond period, or to be retained for that time till the joining bonus expires and things like that. There are good retention strategies which are going to retain the employee for that period of 3 years or whatever. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on retention strategies which retain the employees and keep them engaged. One such retention strategy is an ongoing learning and development scenario, where the more they stay, the more they learn and the more they grow. And if hypothetically, if they want to leave in between, it is like cutting the hen laying golden eggs. They have stopped their learning curve. So if you have got a very attractive job rotation, a very attractive learning and development engine in the organization, that is a positive retention strategy, rather than having a ring fence, where you have the a deferred stock option, or you got a very attractive bonus, or there are some organizations which even give attractive low rate interest for asset acquisition, which are long term. They give a 5-year car loan, or a 10-year housing loan. So you're bonded or wedded to the company for that 10 years, but you've lost your engagement, and you create what I call quit but stay employees. That means the employees quit mentally, but is staying because they want to continue to serve. So in one sense, you've achieved your retention numbers, but you've not achieved your engagement numbers. So I would go for more positive retention strategies like continuing rotation, continuing growth, continuing learning and development, continuing recognition on the spot, continuing valuing of the employee, and contrary to popular belief, the biggest reward and recognition is not necessarily costly in monetary terms. You just go and pat the back, and supposing there is a struggling employee, one of the things that I do is, let us say I've given a project to an employee and he or she is not yet able to do the job. So what you do is you publicly praise the person. Let's say I've got Srikanth and I go and tell him, I mean, Srikanth has not yet completed that project, but in a team meeting, I say, wow, I know, Srikanth, I mean, we were given this particular assignment to him and wow, he's done phenomenally well. Now, of course, Srikanth himself internally is saying, is he referring to me or is he referring to somebody else, But because I praised him openly, what happens is he's of course charged up and everybody comes and says, wow, good, I think you're doing a great job. This is what I say, place a crown just above his head so that he or she grows into it. Then of course, after some time he will come to me and ask, Anand, I mean, you praised me so much, but I'm still struggling. I've not yet met the numbers. I've not yet met the deadline. And there you tell him, don't worry. I'm confident you will do it. I'm sure you'll not only live up to the expectation, but you'll exceed it. Now, this guy is going to go and work harder. He's going to be all the more passionate. Things like this we need to do, and they're not at all costing anything on the bottom line. It does not cost anything on the finance. So these are all, I mean, again, I come back, human connect, let the people interact with the people. And I've never seen a guy wanting to leave his or her manager if the manager bonds manager recognizes the potential and leverages the person. Ring fencing and other deferred stock options, whatever I mentioned, our finance guys innovative work, but the human side is what we need to bring in.
Thank you, Anand. I mean, I really like the point that you made, which is, place the crown and let people grow into it. I think that's something that all of us as leaders and managers can definitely do more of. We'll move on to the next question again from Twitter, and this one comes from Randava, who goes by GRS Talks on Twitter, and he wants to know, how do you develop managers who can have informal conversations in formal settings? So I think I'll just, if I can flesh that out a little bit more, it's not enough, I guess, to just train managers to have these engaging conversations. You, as an organization, you need to be able to provide a culture, you need to be able to provide space for these reflective conversations. So how do you build that sort of a culture, one, and how do you impart that skill in managers to be able to, maximize that culture? What are your views on that, Anand?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is have an open office, setup from a physical point of view. I mean, I hate to say this. I myself, I'm in a cubicle. I don't like cubicles. I mean, you've got this closed cabin and all that where people will have to tap on the door and things like that. I mean, as far as possible, we will have to break not only the physical walls but also the mental walls. I mean, I moved from the IT industry into what I call a legacy industry, where people call me sir, and when they send me an email, they add SH before that, and I mean, and also, even if they have to address me, they will address me as Anand Pillai sir. I mean, it's good that they're not putting the sir before, because I've not yet gone to London to get my knighthood. So guys, they prefix you and they suffix you and all that. Make sure that we live beyond the boundaries, and whenever you want work from an employee or whenever you want feedback for the employee, go to his or her chair, go to his or her place, rather than calling them to your office. That's something that we need to be also very careful about. In addition to that, allow employees to be themselves and try to have these informal get-togethers that are there. I mean, these are all practiced, and somehow as the organization grows bigger, you just tend to lose away. Try to have smaller units where you can have formal connects, and make sure that you go a step further in establishing an equation outside of the office environment. In a lot of organizations, the commutes have helped, the team outs have helped, and enough informal settings are there. But we need to also engage and empower our employees by giving them formal sessions in how to break out of the structured mold, the office mold, the cabin mold, and move out and start engaging with people. Yes, Sundar.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you. I've been talking to a lot of HR leaders, and a common sentiment that flows through is, most organizations today have a high churn environment. And given that, the whole definition of short, medium, and long term is obviously being revisited. So if 12 months to 24 months these days in most companies is being looked at as long term. So in that sort of a background, where does it leave employee engagement? Because I think most leaders are today looking at point in time sort of an impact, then really, what's going to happen 24 months down the line. So what are your views on maintaining a balance between now and the future, and therefore designing engagement practices accordingly?
Yeah. See, I go back to what I said earlier. Let recognition be on the spot. Let reward be on the spot rather than an annual reward function or an annual.
I think we have Anand who's just dropped out of the call, unfortunately.
Hey,
Sundar,
I'm
what are
afraid I
your
think
takes on that bit?
we've just lost Anand a while back. Great. I think we've had an interesting conversation so far. Anand's been fleshing out a whole lot of important themes. He's started out. Those of you who's joined us recently, Anand started out by talking about creating emotional quotient. Empowering managers to have enough skin in the game as far as employee engagement is concerned. We moved on. We looked at various phases in which employees need to get engaged. And Anand actually spoke about how increasingly organizations are going ahead and engaging employees even before they come on board. We also had an interesting discussion about the use of tools and social platforms, and how do we leverage technology, especially to scale up some of our engagement initiatives. And what I found particularly interesting in Anand's point of view was, while the tools are all there for us to use, it's really the culture and the intent that makes a huge difference. So the small things, the manager having an informal conversation with an employee often can precede the use of even an enterprise social network and having an online conversation. So interesting conversation so far, and I think looks like Anand has just joined us back. Savita?
No, I think he's having some trouble with his connectivity there. Yes, I think he's now joined us back. In fact,
Okay, so you know, I guess while we wait for Anand to jump
Yeah.
in, I actually have a whole bunch of. So
Yes,
Anand, are
I'm
you
back.
back? Okay, so I was just doing a quick recap of some of the interesting points that we spoke about. So do you want to go ahead and complete the answer?
I was just talking about how you can keep short-term engagements. I mean, that is very important
Right.
for us. Short-term recognition, a pat on the back does not have to wait for the end of the year. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another question that has actually come up on Twitter, and this is from Rajesh, and he's asking, is there merit in training managers on spirituality so they can have more meaningful conversations with employees? It's a slightly different tangent, but what are your views on that?
No, I mean, I don't know. See, spirituality can have different connotations to different people, but we need to train our managers to have a communication not from head to head, but from heart to heart. I mean, that is something, connect with the internal employee. That's something that we will most certainly have to do. I mean, there's no two ways about that. And I don't think we should go into spirituality per se, but we definitely should train our managers to get to have that conversation head to head.
Okay, so we've got exactly 10 more minutes to go. So I do encourage our viewers to keep posting questions. We do have 60 minutes, so we'll try and answer whatever we could, and then I'm sure Anand would answer them later as well. So Anand, in the spirit of wrapping up, what are the red flags? What should organizations and HR leaders be wary of when creating employee engagement policies? The don'ts, the red flags that we should stay away from.
Yeah, one red flag that I mentioned already is this whole business of ring fencing. You tend to sit back and relax. Don't worry, this fellow will not leave us for another 5 years, or this fellow will not, this lady will not leave us for another 6 years because I've got them hooked with this long-term loan or with this long-term stock option. That is definitely a red flag. The earlier employee retention strategy of ring fencing or bonding them is a definite no-no, and I'm strongly against that, as I had mentioned even earlier. That's something that we should definitely not engage in. That is one thing. The second thing is, be particularly available for the employee during their low periods. So if an employee, and try to train our managers to sense the non-verbal communication. And I've got a lot of cues that are there. For example, an employee who will be normally talking to you in long sentences and everything, when you ask him or her, they'll start giving you telegraphic replies. So that's definitely an indication of the employee being disengaged. This is true in our home also. I mean, you ask your wife, how is your day, or how is food, or how is dinner, and then she give a long story. I mean, there's a good engagement. And then if you ask her, how was your day, and she says, okay, it was good. I mean, some of those what I call motherhood statements. I mean, that it is not okay. So try to trap the non-verbal signals and immediately step in. That's one thing that I would give the red flag that I should watch out for, is look for the non-verbal signals, and particularly when the employee says I'm okay, they're definitely not okay. They need to give you something more. So that's one thing. The other thing is, during appraisal time, please, for heaven's sake, don't ever do appraisal in a rush. And for heaven's sake, again, don't ever postpone an appraisal meeting. These are bad signals, because that clearly gives a message to the employee that you don't care. Something else is more important. One of the things that I do is, when I have my appraisal meetings, it is early in the morning when I am fresh in my mind, where there is no transactional pressure. And I make sure, as far as possible, a meeting that is set for me to discuss and give feedback is adhered to. So these are some of the things that we need to come back to when we bring in this concept of engagement, and look out for non-verbal signals. That is particularly around the joining period, around the appraisal period, around the increment cycle, because those are all what I call peak times. Go ahead, Sundar.
Great, thank you, Anand. I think keeping your eyes and ears open, both at the individual level and also as an organization, is critical. I think there is also some merit in putting together a guide, which essentially says what they say and what they mean from an employee standpoint. So I think that's a valid point that you made. The other question that I have, and again, to wrap up this discussion, a lot of organizations are actually now moving away from this whole yearly employee engagement sort of an endeavor. Most organizations are finding little value in that once in a year sort of an exercise. What are your views on that? Do you recommend that still be a practice, or are there other ways of looking at it?
No, I see that is definitely, as I told you, and I will keep on harping on that. An employee engagement survey is a lagging indicator. I mean, let us be very clear. That is only a measure of what we have done or not done. Uh, as a practice, I think it's an okay practice as long as you track it. There are three things that I want to mention about this. First thing is, if you have started a particular practice of having an engagement survey, make sure that it is at a predetermined and at a regular practice, not randomly. There are organizations which start and then they stop for 3 years or 4 years, and then again they start and go on. It should be predetermined for every 18 months, whether good or bad, whether the company is doing well or not. You need to have this on that predetermined periodic interval. First thing. The second one is, as far as possible, and I know that all organizations are doing it, use an external vendor and not an internal vendor whose the authenticity is to be very clear. And having said that, the third and a very important guideline is, do not change the vendor for the cycle. I know that some organizations, they go with vendor A for the employee engagement survey for one cycle and the second cycle, and then suddenly, courtesy a new CHRO or a new person who has come in, and he or she brings in their own connect, and then they start the employee engagement survey with that new vendor. This will not give you an apples to apples comparison for you to come out with action items. So the three things that I'm saying with respect to these surveys, if at all you do it in a predetermined cycle, and let that cycle continue come what may, A, and B, make sure that you always have it as far as possible with an external vendor. There are enough organizations like Hewitt or IBM, Connexa or Gallup or Great Places to Work or Towers Watson. I mean, these are all organizations that are there which can do it for you. And the third and a very, very important one, whatever organization you choose to do the engagement survey with, make sure that you do enough due diligence, because it's not a one-off engagement, but it is a longer term. Minimum, I would say, 3 to 5 years. I would recommend more towards the 5-year period, or 3 to 5 cycles. So if you've got an 18-month cycle, minimum 3 cycles you go with a particular vendor, if at all you do want to change. But as far as possible, try not to change, so that you have data over a period of time which you can slice and dice and come out with meaningful action items. Yes, Sundar.
Great, thank you very much, Anand. I think there were, a whole lot of interesting nuggets on employee engagement that you shared over the course of the last 60 minutes. What I particularly like is most of the things that you said were very, very tweet friendly, and I know that people have been tweeting and retweeting extensively. So to the viewers, People Matters, I'm sure, is going to be curating all of these interesting tweets. We also have a lot of people who've sent us videos and articles, reference material on employee engagement. So all of that is going to get storified and is going to be presented to you shortly. So thank you again, Anand, for making the time. This indeed was an interesting discussion. With that, I'll hand it over back to Savita Vijayan from People Matters. Savita.
Thank you, Sundar. You've been a wonderful host, I should tell you. I mean, your ability to bring questions from Facebook, from Twitter, from all over the place, amazing. Good job, Sundar.
Thank you, Anand. Savita.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, first of all, listeners, for being a part of this first ever L&D Leadership League Twangout. As we are coming to the end of this session, and the winner of the most active listener is right here with me in my hand, in fact. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. Krishnan Iyer from Chennai. His handle is @Krish_HRD. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and being the most active listener out there. So you are eligible to have 1 year print and digital subscription from People Matters, and that's going to reach you very soon, Krishnan. Congratulations once again.
Thank you, Krishnan. Congratulations from my side. Good job. I mean, you're active.
Thank you so much, Anand. With this, we come to an end of the super exciting first Twangout. First of all, I want to thank Anand for being the first fantastic speaker for our Twangout. This is the launching prepared for the L&D Leadership Twangout, and it's a very, very big thank you that I would like to lend to you.
Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. Anytime for People Matters.
Thank you so much. And a very big thank you to Sundar to actually support all the questions and support Anand wherever he wanted more of the flesh in the session that you actually brought into. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sundar, from me too.
Thank you, Savita. Thank you,
Thank
Savita.
you
Thank
to
you,
each
Anand.
one of you for being a fantastic audience today. We'll see you again next month on 11th of June, same time between 4 to 5 p.m. We have Abhijit Bhaduri who's going to talk about what L&D professionals need to know about learning. And we look forward to the next Twangout soon and welcoming you very soon. With this, we will close the Twangout session for today and wish you all a very, very great evening. Thank you very much, Anand, once again. Thank you, Sundar. Very good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you. Thank you.